Today's talk is on the Phena Sutta, which is a sutta on the emptiness of the five clinging aggregates. So you can see that it's keeping in the theme of where we are in the course. And this sutta speaks to the impermanence of all things, and in particular, the impermanence of the aggregates themselves. Let me read a little bit of it, and I'll comment as we go along. The Buddha was staying with the Evosians at the banks of the Ganges River. He addressed those assembled. Friends, suppose that a large glob of foam were floating down the river, and a person with good eyesight saw it and clearly examined it. To them it would appear empty, void, without any substance. For what substance could there be in a glob of foam? In the same way, any practitioner well versed in the Dhamma observes and appropriately examines any form that is past, future, or present, any form that is internal, external, obvious or subtle, common or extraordinary, near or far. To those well versed in the Dhamma, it would appear empty, void, without any substance. For what substance could there be in any form? So the form we're talking about is a physical form, but also really any physical form. All things in the phenomenal world are impermanent, and so any physical thing is obviously impermanent. The problem with anatta, with the self-referential ego self, is it attaches itself to anything that arises. Another word for that is joining. The Buddha often used that word as opposed to clinging or attaching. We join with things. We join with our suffering. And it's out of ignorance that we do that, because we don't understand the nature of things. And so we join ourselves. We create an identity by joining to impermanent phenomena. And we describe ourselves that way. Is that clear? And so think about that just a little bit. It's kind of foolish to describe yourself by something impermanent when you're hoping to establish a permanent self, aren't you? It can't work, and it never can work. And so anytime that we identify ourselves as a permanent physical form, we know that we're doing that as an exercise that's rooted in ignorance, as an ongoing way of thinking that is rooted in ignorance. Now, suppose that in the rainy season, it is raining fat, heavy drops, and a water bubble appears and disappears on the water. A person with good eyesight sees this and clearly examines it. The water bubble would appear empty, void, and without substance. For what substance could there be in a water bubble? In the same way, any practitioner well versed in the Dhamma observes and appropriately examines any feeling that is past, future, or present, any feeling that is internal or external, obvious or subtle, common or extraordinary, near or far. To those well versed in the Dhamma, it would appear empty, void, without substance. For what substance could there be in feelings? So again, in the same way, we describe ourselves by how we're feeling, don't we? I'm having a good day, I'm having a bad day. You made me feel a certain way. That movie made me feel great, or that movie made me feel awful, or that conversation, or what I just heard on the news, or an endless list of things that we use to describe ourselves to ourselves and the kind of life that we're having. We describe it based on how we're feeling, don't we? We make feeling the benchmark for our life. I'm feeling good, I'm feeling bad, or like we got into a little bit last week, I'm feeling ambivalent, I'm indifferent to this. And so I'm not really experiencing my life at all. What foolishness there is in describing our lives and the value of our life in relation to impermanent feelings, isn't it? Isn't it foolish? There's nothing there. They're like foam on the ocean. Is that clear? So the Buddha is taking us through the emptiness of the five clinging aggregates. Form, feeling. What substance could there be in anything that's impermanent? Now, suppose during the hot season, a mirage was shimmering. A person with good eyesight sees it and clearly examines it. The mirage would appear empty, void, and without substance. For what substance could there be in a mirage that is constantly changing? In the same way, any practitioner, well versed in the Dhamma, observes and appropriately examines any perception that is past, future, or present, any perception that is internal or external, obvious or subtle, common or extraordinary, near or far. To those well versed in the Dhamma, it would appear empty, void, and without substance. For what substance could there be in perceptions that are constantly changing? Right? The way we see things and the way we interpret them, those things are constantly changing based on the experience we've had, and really based on whatever we're holding in mind, the level of our mindfulness or mindlessness in the present moment is going to determine our perception of an experience, and that's always changing. So it would be foolish to describe the value of our life in relation to a constantly changing perception, correct? Form, feeling, perceptions. Now, suppose that a person with good eyesight is seeking heartwood, meaning seeking the truth of the Dhamma, the truth of our existence. In seeking heartwood, they went to a forest with a sharp axe. There they find a large banana tree. They cut it at the root and remove the top. They peel away the outer skin and fail to find even sapwood, to say nothing of finding heartwood. Banana trees are just softwood all the way through. Can't build them. Having good eyesight, they clearly examine the banana tree, and the tree would appear empty, void, without substance, and regard to heartwood. For what substance could there be in a banana tree? In the same way, any practitioner well versed in the Dhamma observes and appropriately examines any fabrications that are past, future, or present, any feeling that is internal or external, obvious or subtle, common or extraordinary, near or far. To those well versed in the Dhamma, fabrications would appear empty, void, without substance. For what substance could there be in fabrications that are constantly changing? The same thing. The mental fabrications, the assumptions that we make about ourselves in relation to the world, rooted in ignorance, no matter how strong they appear, are without any substance at all. For what substance could there be in something that is impermanent? And really, it's something that we made up. It's really an imaginary construct in our own minds, no matter how substantial it may feel. Is that clear? Form, feeling, perceptions, mental fabrications. Now, suppose a magician were to display a magic trick, and a person with good eyesight clearly sees the trick. The trick would appear empty, void, without substance. For what substance could there be in a magic trick? In the same way, any practitioner well versed in the Dhamma observes and appropriately examines any consciousness. Consciousness in this sense is ongoing thinking rooted in that original ignorance, right? It's not cosmic consciousness, consciousness with a big C, some kind of imaginary consciousness that joins us as one cosmic unit. And that may be true, but that's not what we're talking about. It's just ongoing thinking rooted in ignorance. Any consciousness that is internal, external, obvious or subtle, common or extraordinary, near or far. To those well versed in the Dhamma, any consciousness would appear empty, void, without substance. For what substance could there be in consciousness that is impermanent and rooted in ignorance of Four Noble Truths? Seeing these five aggregates clearly, the well-instructed follower of the Dhamma grows disenchanted with form, disenchanted with feelings, disenchanted with perception, disenchanted with fabrications, and disenchanted with thinking rooted in ignorance. You could just as easily use disjoined as opposed to disenchanted. We are no longer enamored with these things that we've used up until now, we've used to describe ourselves to ourselves. Those things that we place such value on it that we use them to describe our lives to ourselves, when in fact, those things that we were using are like foam on the ocean. There's nothing there. And when we're using something that is inherently insubstantial to describe ourselves, what's going to be the underlying experience of ourselves in the world? It's an insubstantial experience, isn't it? Because it's based on nothing. It's based on ignorance. And this relates a little bit to what we were talking about 2 weeks ago, and the actually it was last, the indifference and the ambivalence to those neutral feelings. It's in that same vein, and this will become a little bit more clear when we talk about karma in a few weeks. And then I'm going to give a couple classes just on that ambivalence, the indifference to all the things that we're neutral to. But this relates directly to that. So the five clinging aggregates are the personal experience of the ongoing personal experience of suffering. Is that relatively clear to everyone? Form, feeling, perceptions, mental fabrications, and ongoing consciousness. It's another way of describing the self. Clear? It's also another way of describing anatta. It's another way of describing karma. Karma is a present moment unfolding of past intentional actions moderated by the present level of our mindfulness. That's also the experience that we're having of ourself in the moment, isn't it? If our views of ourselves in relation to the world are rooted in reality, there will be no stress. There will be no dukkha. How could there be? There's no foundation for it in reality. But because of a misunderstanding of who we are in relation to the world, we create constant stress, even in those times when it's not readily apparent, when we're not excited over something. There's still that underlying stress because we've established a reality for ourselves that in and of itself is based on something that is false, something that is permanent. Is that clear? So the 5 clinging aggregates are a constant. The 5 clinging aggregates are a constant state of stress, or in a constant state of stress, no matter how we're feeling, because of that misunderstanding. So there can be no peace in that fabricated self. This is getting to the heart of fabrications. How could there be a peace or anything of any value in something that is fabricated? Clear? Does everybody get it? We do spend our lifetimes trying to create value and substance in something that is inherently incapable of holding value and holding substance, like foam on the ocean. But because our focus is on that one thing, this thing that is like foam on the ocean, there's always stress in our lives. It's like we're always trying to fill a cup with a hole in the bottom. It can never be done. There's nothing, there's no sides to the cup. There's nothing to hold there's nothing to the vessel. There's this 5 clinging aggregates, the vehicle that we use to describe ourselves as the personal experience of our life. There's nothing there. There's nothing to hold anything there. So what happens when we let go of that? When we let go of all the views that we're using to say this is me when this isn't me, it just vanishes. And what's left? Pardon me?
Or just what is?
What's left is the ongoing process of becoming. It's who we are in the present moment as a ongoing process of becoming. There's no such thing as a permanent self. But there is such a thing as a constantly in the process of becoming self. The problem is that you can't fix that self at any point in time. Right? Always in a constant process of becoming. When we can hold that in mind, then we can hold in mind the most important thing. What am I going to feed this thing in this present moment to produce what the next moment's going to bring? Because that's exactly how our life unfolds. What I bring in, what I hold in mind in this moment is going to determine the next moment and the next moment and the next minutes, weeks, months, and years. What I'm holding in mind in this moment. That's the big aha to the Dhamma. And what do we know to hold in mind? We know to hold the tenets or the framework of the Eightfold Path. Because when we can frame our thinking within that Eightfold Path, then everything that flows from that will be flowing from a wise or a way of thinking that is rooted in wisdom. So we can develop from something that is stuck in what we're describing as 5 clinging aggregates, impermanent phenomena that clings itself to itself out of ignorance, and free those aggregates up to experience life as life unfolds. And so the aggregates are still in place as a way of experiencing life, but now they're simply a reference point in time rather than a self-referential experience. And so then we're no longer describing ourselves through our experience. We're describing ourselves by what is unfolding in the present moment, free of attachment, free of the need for things to be any different than they are. And the power and freedom in that, framed by the Eightfold Path, is it presents the true meaning of life as life unfolds. And it makes every moment in life significant. Why? Because now you're finally here, or we're finally here in our life as our life unfolds. So that's today's talk. Any questions on today's talk? We'll go around the room. Does everybody see, before we go, do you see how this fits into our Dhamma study and where we are with it? Okay. So let's go around the room. We'll start with Becky. Good to see you.
It's really good to be here. A lot of things during your talk, I was having a lot of trouble in the beginning of your talk, really wrapping my head around how does one let go of the 5 clinging aggregates. I mean, I realize that it's a process, but how, what, then what? But when you ended it by saying, once you let go of that self-referential personality, or you work toward letting go of that, you are now just becoming in each moment. And that gave me a place to go with my thoughts and my work on trying to do this. And I was getting really lost in sort of figuring, like, what is he talking about? How can I ever even think of, then what? And you brought it all together in the end and made me feel a lot better, because it just made me realize that I was stuck. And if I keep the Eightfold Path in mind, I try to remain mindful, then I will be in a process of becoming. And that's something I can grab onto and work toward. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing up that important point. We're always in a constant process of becoming, and that's the thing to remember. Does everybody understand that? Because when you start understanding the ramifications or the implications of the Dhamma, it feels like annihilation, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What's going to happen to me? What happens when I let go of all those wrong views? But like this sutta is pointing to, those views and what those views are supporting are like foam on the ocean. There's nothing there. But because we think it's us and it's all that we are, of course it feels like annihilation to let go of those views. But again, that's all it is. It's a view. There's nothing there. What we think of ourselves is, again, like foam on the ocean. But it's all we think we are, so it's so hard to let go of those things. But they're just views rooted in ignorance. They do not describe a self, and they can never describe a self. And remember in the Anatta Lakkhana Sutta, the Buddha talks about, if it's impermanent, how can it be a self? How can it? But the underlying understanding of that, what we are then, is always in a constant process of becoming. That there's such great liberation in that. Because then I know I don't have to affix myself to anything in order to establish myself. And I know that because I can't affix myself to anything. I can't establish myself by clinging. I finally realized that. I can only establish myself in any realistic way through wisdom, through understanding. Yeah. How? How can you do that through understanding?
Yeah, I get it, but I can't really explain it. I think the deeper that I get into the practice, the more of an understanding of how the mind works. I mean, I get a bigger understanding of how the mind works. And how analyzing and figuring out the mind is actually going to work against really understanding your mind.
If you get too analytical.
Right. If you're just chasing some kind of knowledge or an answer, then you're lost. Or at least for me, that's my experience. So it's ironic how the more you let go of, the more you start to really understand how the mind works. Mm-hmm. And how it's really it has the capacity to distract you from just being in the present moment and being skillful with what's occurring, or seeing what's occurring and being able to, act wisely. So, yeah, that's it.
That is it. Yeah, it's just seeing what's occurring without any filter of me,
right,
in between it. It's just what's here. It's just living life. Thank you, Anthony. Good to see you.
Good morning. Thinking coming up with a lot of examples in my head when you were going through the 5 clinging aggregates, like how we think that a rainy day is a bad day.
Right.
You wake up and go, "Oh, this is terrible. It's a rainy day." Well, it's not really. The rain isn't terrible. It doesn't make your day terrible.
Yeah.
It's your perception of it.
Yep.
And then you were talking about how people try to acquire things, and really it's like trying to pour water in a glass with a hole in it. Kind of reminded me of how some people are always striving for success and collecting things in cars and houses, and they actually, the reorientation of that would be to not think that success comes with happiness, comes with success, but actually the opposite. Success comes with happiness.
Yeah.
And it's just really all kind of points to the same place for me, which is that it's not the people or situations that cause you stress, it's your viewpoint.
That's it. Yep. The Eightfold Path begins with that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Right.
I always try to struggle with that, because if I can get really stressed out because I'm in like a confrontation with another attorney or a case or something, if I can find a way to look at that as not necessarily a problem, but a challenge, that this is a small piece to get to a higher place, I find that it's very comforting. That just, it's sort of like you just, okay, calm down and just, yesterday I was cross-examining a doctor for 2 hours, and he was very, very difficult because he would take a simple question and just run off with it forever. And the judge wasn't controlling it. And I just I said in my mind, all right, this is the game you want to play. I'm going to keep getting back to that question. And it was just the goal. I just said, this is my challenge, just to stay here with this person and get to where I need to go. And I found that it wasn't stressful at all when I thought of it that way.
Yeah, because you were fully present with what was occurring.
Yeah.
You were mindful. Yeah, there's no stress in those situations. Isn't that remarkable? Thank you for sharing that. I mean, that's the point. You didn't need for that moment and what was unfolding to be any different than what it was. That's it. Thanks. Laura, good to see you.
Good to be here. It's nice to be reminded of the aggregates, the clinging aggregates in that way. the terminology. And I think something that you said kind of brought that whole idea of ambivalence into a clearer light for me, and understanding it as this time that, at least for me, this time where I'm not holding these ideas in mind, or the Eightfold Path isn't really being held in mind, or the aggregates. So this ambivalence comes. Like, I guess I was trying to understand what you meant by, even when we are ambivalent, this stress is happening, because I think I thought of that word as this period of time where it's like there's nothing, you're kind of, there's nothing going on, but in the context of the aggregates, I can see that. I think I can see that it's a time when I'm not conscious. I don't want to use that word, but I'm not holding the path in mind in these.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's kind of a lack of being present with the unfolding of life as life occurs.
Yeah.
And I think that is, for me, where it's at, is that those moments, all those ambivalent moments, like that I'm missing it. Like I'm missing life as life unfolds. And just like a terrible tragedy just hit, kind of close to our family. And, it's like, it was like this moment of like, wow, I'm so present as things are unfolding. And then kind of watching those cleaning aggregates come in to like add more to what actually was happening.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
Yeah.
and I didn't even think of the aggregates, but I was through with all the practice that we've done here, I was able to like separate from that. So it was really just what was happening. And it is sad, and it is really what, these, life is sad, people pass away, and like there's a moment where your feelings are your feelings because that's what's occurring. And it was, but there was like a lightness to it, instead of, what I noticed is when I attached my form to it or my other things, that it became heavy and it didn't need to be. So yeah, I think that's really kind of this ambivalence is like a really fascinating concept, because I just from this morning just realized how much of my life I'm living like that, and that's what I'm missing. That's where my work can be now in the practice. So thank you so much.
Hey, thank you. Like I said, we'll get into it a little bit more after we're done with the course, but that really is where we live most of our lives, in that ambivalent, or like Becky, that indifferent state. And which means that we're indifferent to most of our life. I think the example I used last week was, in order to achieve that state, when I'm vacuuming, I also have the music on loud,
Right.
to distract me away from, so I'm not present with what I'm doing. What is most important is the vacuuming. But what I'm actually doing is listening to music. I'm not present for my life. And so in that moment, I'm taking away even the possibility that there could be some meaning into vacuuming the floor. But of course there is. There always is, because it's what I'm doing, or whatever we're doing in that moment has meaning, simply because it's what we're doing. But when we're distracting ourselves, and this example, purposely distracting myself out of this moment, I'm creating an indifferent moment for my life. I'm creating my own indifference to my life. Do you see? And so that's what we do. We're gonna get more into that, but it's just another strategy to ignore what's occurring, which is the stress of not knowing my own life, not being present. Thank you, Kevin. Good to see you this morning.
Nice to see you. Nice to be here with everybody. Sometimes it feels, I don't even want to use the word feels, but it seems very abstract when we talk about the 5 clinging aggregates, because so much of our lives have been experienced in the clinging aggregates, or the joined aggregates together. And when you were talking initially, you talked a lot about feelings, and while I was trying to concentrate and listen, overarching that was the teachings that Buddha gave very early on, and the way you taught it in this course on the 4 foundations of mindfulness. And I think that we often end up in ambivalent states because we ignore feelings as they occur. Whereas Kandana is saying feelings are conditioned and they're in the context of impermanence and they will arise. And holding in mind the four foundations of mindfulness helps us understand the feelings as impermanent, as foam on the ocean, and thus disjoining or unclinging these aggregates. And we live our life as life occurs, whether feelings are good when we have a rainy day or when we have a sunny day. And we experience the feelings as impermanent. And sometimes the five clinging aggregates seem as almost a chasm, and the four foundations of mindfulness are just a little bit of a way to get a step closer and feel it, or again, I don't want to use that word, but experience life as life occurs as that unclean process or unbinding process happens. So that's the best way I could put it.
That's a great way of putting it. Thank you. We can fall into the mindset of thinking that the five clinging aggregates are bad. They just are. We should be as dispassionate about the aggregates as we are about anything, especially when it's referring to ourselves. The five clinging aggregates are just words used to describe the personal experience of suffering. We have to put words to something so we can have a conversation about it. And those are the words chosen. The Pali word is Khanda, Khanda. The Sanskrit word is skanda, Skandha, and that means a heap. It also means a tree trunk. And when you start referring to it in reference to the Pali words, look at this vehicle of suffering as this heap of suffering. And that's what it is. It's these things that come together into this big mass of confused and deluded thinking that has a resulting experience of suffering. It just describes it. That's all it is. But because it's so close to home, because it's the mirror, it's very, very hard to see, and it seems abstract. And I hope I describe it in a way that's not so abstract that it's not useful, because really all we're doing is talking about ourselves. Thank you. Gary, good to see you this morning. How are you?
First of all, I appreciate that you go back and some of this stuff been coming in here and partially through it already.
Keep coming. I go over there.
Yeah,
I go back a lot.
Because I've gone back and some of being able to catch up a little bit, but it kind of catches up to me, and I appreciate that you articulate some of those things in the back. And in the same vein, a lot of times I can't necessarily bring to words some of the feelings that I have and some of the things that resonate with me. Yeah. So it tends to be a bit shorter. There are still things that I digest and I take on board. And in particular, the imagery and the analogy of the foam and the water. Yeah. I think that really resonates with me. And I'm going to take the opportunity to go back. And I think this was a chapter ahead. Is that correct?
Actually, the Phena Sutta isn't in the book.
Okay.
But it's.
I would like to have the opportunity, if there's more references to digest it more and read more about it.
Oh, yeah. It's linked in the email. Do you get the emails?
I don't recall one this week, but actually that was one of the other things I was going to relate to, is that myself, like many, was out of power until just a few days ago. And I had mentioned that one of my goals in life is to get off the grid. And I had mentioned to a friend of mine that it was just so nice, actually. I didn't look at it as a hindrance. I didn't look at it as a bad day. I didn't look at it as a rainy day. I didn't look at it as a snowy day. And it was so nice to be within myself, away from electronics. It was quiet.
Oh, yeah.
When I got dark, I meditated, I slept. To just relating all that to what's accumulated in the times that I've been here and the times that I've read so far, it seemed like I was able to get more into myself and enjoy that more for the moment that it was.
Well, that's great. Thank you for sharing that with the group. This is Gary. Gary just joined us a couple of weeks ago. Gary, again, welcome to our Sangha. Yeah, I mean, it was like that when I was out without power for, I think, 5 days, till Wednesday or so. And yeah, I mean, it's inconvenient at times, and it got a little chilly, but it's just pleasant. But I do that a lot of times. I'll take a weekend like that, and I'll just no electronics, just And it's just a nice, quiet way. Things settle down. You'll experience this as you continue to come to our Sangha. Things just fall into place. You hear something, 5, 10, 15, 20 times, and all of a sudden it just makes sense. And that's just the way it is. So I'm glad you've joined us. Jay, good to see you.
Thanks. Good to see you, everybody. I'm having a hard time wrapping my mind around this much, but the only thing I can really fall back on is my way of dealing with reality generally is kind of like a prize fighter. If you stand there, it's going to, pop you in the snoot, and you got to bob and weave. That's what I do.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a difficult concept, the 5 clinging aggregates, just because it's so familiar, I think. But we're gonna spend a lot of time going over it right now in the next 2 weeks, and then after we're done with the course, we'll get into this idea of indifference or ambivalence a little bit more. I'm glad you're here, Lisa. Good to see you.
See you too. Great to be here. Well, as usual, I've had a lot of thoughts about what you said and what every single person said. I could, understand that and then have more thoughts about it. And I think I kind of get it, but it's just an understanding of it and putting it into practice are two different things. But I guess in my mind, what I thought about was, the foam in the ocean, I think of a rainbow because it's very impermanent and just a set of circumstances that, it's raining on one side, it's sunny on the other, and then I would always run out, and if it was doing that, often I would see a rainbow in the same place over my neighbor. And just stand there and watch it, usually there's 2, until it disappeared. Sometimes it stayed for a long time. And that's what I would do. And just enjoy watching that. And if I ran out and there was no rainbow, okay, there's no rainbow. But that's, if I could be that way all the time about anything and things being so impermanent and not get invested in it, like, oh, I'm so angry, there's not a rainbow. Well, I'm not. It's whether it is or isn't, it's Mother Nature. And that could apply to my whole life. But the happiness is seeing the rainbow, but knowing that it's not going to be there permanently.
Yeah, but it's the same mind that sees the rainbow when it's there and is aware of it when it's not there. Do you see what I'm saying? The point of reference that experiences joy at the rainbow is always the same point of reference, whether the rainbow is there or not. So that point of reference in the process of becoming is simply enjoying the rainbow as the rainbow passes in front of it. But there's no reason why the rainbow should affect the quality of that mind that's experiencing the rainbow. You following me?
No, I'm thinking of it in terms of just, it's there in the present. It's there in the present moment, and it's a passing thing, and just experience the joy of it.
Yes, it's not to be owned. It's just to be experienced.
No, exactly.
Yep.
That's why it's such a great analogy for how to live life.
Oh, it's a great one. And as foolish as the thought would be, what a beautiful rainbow, I need to own it. That's just what we do. Mm-hmm. Especially when we tell ourselves how sad I am now that I no longer own the rainbow. It's not right in front of me. I can't see it. It's just foolish. And it's such a great metaphor because it points directly to what we're talking about. It's so impermanent, isn't it? But as all things are, all things are as impermanent as a rainbow. Might not go as quick, like a mountain or a tree or something like that, but they're all impermanent. Thank you. Liz, good to see you.
Good to see you too. I'm
Well,
enjoying what everyone has to say. I was wondering if you're using ambivalence to describe what we were talking about the other night about neutral.
Yep.
Because I know everyone, and if you listen to the lesson, you'll hear at a certain point in the Sangha, all this murmuring, of, wait a minute.
mean when
You mean-
everybody's heads exploded?
Yeah. So I was just wondering if ambivalent was a word that you could use to trade for neutrality. I've been thinking about that, and
Or indifference. Becky pointed out it's
Yeah, I think I understand that a little bit better than the first time I heard it. So thank you for that, that's all.
Thank you, Liz. Yeah, we'll get into it a little bit more, and I think as we get through the rest of the course, it'll become a little bit more apparent, how much of our life is spent in that indifference to it, to what's occurring. So thank you. Mary, good to see you today. How are you?
Here, during these, both reading the chapter and hearing your talks, it seems so clear when you're saying it, and then, you really have to give it some thought and try to remember that one thing literally leads to another, and even the fact that one thing in the 5 clinging aggregates leads to another is not something that you should fight.
Okay.
That it's going to, and that's it, and that's it. And try not to fight it, basically.
Yeah.
Just be with it, and be with whatever is occurring makes so much more sense than constantly being in battle with life.
Yeah, thank you for, the 5 clinging aggregates aren't good or bad. They're there to recognize that's what's occurring. Be present with it. Thank you. Diane, I didn't forget you. Good to see you.
Good to be here. I think I have to, I'm glad to be here. That's it.
Good to see you. Tom, good to see you.
I would say this is one of the concepts that's hardest for me. I didn't have that aha moment. Maybe overthinking. I think the foam in the ocean is kind of ironic description, because every time I think I understand it, I go to understand it and it disappears. So I think I kind of, I understand clinging, and I understand clinging the feelings and perceptions and how it anatta comes into play there as well. So I think I have understandings around it, but I can't. There's something I'm having trouble with.
Yeah.
It'll come. Hopefully.
Thank you. What you're having trouble with is the essence of the Dhamma, and understanding of what constitutes a self or not self, or all of that. What we're so ambivalent about, what we're so indifferent about, is what we're hoping to ignore. The fact that I don't know. And what we're developing through the Dhamma is the knowing, understanding who we are, understanding at a profound and penetrative level what constitutes life as life unfolds. And we're moving away or abandoning everything that is rooted in ignorance of what's occurring. Everything. and gaining a true understanding of life as life unfolds, of who we are. Debbie, good to see you.
Really good to be here. So I've been feeling really stuck and had, a lot of stuff the last couple of weeks, and it started with one loss, and felt like that was about a little less than 2 weeks ago. I felt like I was able to be present with my understanding then, and then life just rolled out a whole other series of tragedies and things, and so I feel like I really got lost in it. Like it was like what somebody was saying, it's one thing to understand, but it's another thing to practice it.
Yeah.
And I just feel like I got really stuck in old behaviors, old perceptions, fabrications, the whole 5, all 5 of them. And so what was really helpful was last night when I sat down to do some reading of the chapter. I can't remember exactly what it was. I do remember it was on page 223, that there was just a helpful message about kind of being stuck and about in that suffering, and kind of like you can't fix it, that too is impermanent. And just the idea of holding on to the stuckness is impermanent too. That, it was just a really helpful thing to read at the end of this period of time in my life, So that's good, and I just kind of remember that, and even if I can't fix it, that's all part of the ego personality too.
Yep.
And that, so it was all like getting into that self-referential stuff. So that was helpful, and that was the end. And then today was very helpful too. So I felt like it was really been a good end to the last couple of weeks. And I thank you for everyone.
Thank you, Debbie. This is it really is remarkable, the level of understanding. This what we're into in these 4 weeks right now. The 3 marks of existence: dependent origination, 5 clinging aggregates. This middle part of this course is really they're the profound teachings of an awakened human being, and we're touching that. What we're talking about is we're getting to the essence of the not self characteristic, and that really is remarkable. I'm not gonna. I won't embellish it anymore. It's enough what we're doing. You mentioned feeling a little bit stuck. I'm getting the feeling that I'm feeling that from a lot of us, and all 3 sanghas too, and that's not a bad thing. It could be, but in this sense, it seems like recognition of stuckness rather than being stuck. Do you see the difference? I think you're all recognizing where you've been stuck in the past, and now it's just a matter of moving past it. We're going to continue next week with what we're going to do this week on dependent origination and 5 clinging aggregates. So if you want to just reread it again, and I linked another article, I can't remember what it is, that we'll talk about next week. And we'll probably spend 2 more weeks on this dependent origination and 5 clinging aggregates too, and really get to the heart of the matter. But all of this, there's so much in the suttas. It said that there's 84,000 or so, which means a lot. Nobody really knows. And there's just an incredible amount of information. In fact, just put it on word. Just the number of words in the Pali Canon is mind-boggling. So the amount of information that's there is equally mind-boggling. But when it comes down to it, is simply understanding who we are in relation to the world we're living in.
Yep.
And the Buddha figured it out. And he said, something? Everything is impermanent, so don't take it so personal. In fact, I would say don't take any of it as personal. There's no reason to do it. But when we do, it leads to the 3rd mark of existence, to dukkha. So you know when you're experiencing stress, it's because you're taking it personal. So getting back to what, and relating this to the Bahia Sutta and really what we're talking about in the Bahia Sutta, people remember the Bahia Sutta, but he is walking down the road and he's concerned that at any point he might die, and he's not sure if he has a complete Dhamma practice. So he's seeking out the Buddha, and he seeks the Buddha out. He says, Buddha, teach me your Dhamma for my long-term welfare. And the Buddha says, I'm on my alms round, not now. But he is excited because he thinks I'm going to die, or the Buddha's going to die before he gets this knowledge. And he's pressing the Buddha, and the Buddha says, no, not now. He asks him a third time. The Buddha finally relents. I'm telling this a little bit quicker than I usually do. And very quick, even to make it a little bit more concise, the Buddha says, in what is seen, there is only the seen. In what is heard, there is only the heard. In what is cognized, there is only the cognized. For when for you, Bahia, there is no you here, there, or anywhere in between. You'll be an awakened, you'll be an arahant. And again, he said the Buddha is simply teaching Bahia to not take anything personal. For when what is seen, what you're looking at, is only what you're looking at. It's not looking at something in relation to how you would like it to be. In what is seen, there is only the seen. What I'm hearing is only what I'm hearing, not what I'd like to hear. What is heard, there is only the heard. In what is cognized, what I'm thinking about is only in relation to what's actually occurring, rather than framing it around a self-reference, what I'd like to be thinking about in relation to what's occurring. You see? There is only in what here, there, and everywhere in between, there is only what is there, and not anything embellished. The essence of the Dhamma. Okay. Any questions about today's class? We're really getting there. So you'll read this chapter again if you want, and you'll read the article that I'll refer to in Monday's and Thursday's email, and we'll do this next week. The retreat's coming up May the 27th, May the 17th to the 20th, I think, whatever, it's online. We'll finish like we usually do with the Buddha's words on Metta. So find your relaxed meditative posture. Gently close your eyes and gently close your mouths. And holding your back straight but not stiff, your ears aligned with your shoulders, your nose aligned with your navel, and becoming mindful of your in-breath and your out-breath. And these are the Buddha's words on Metta from the Karaniya Metta Sutta. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud or demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove. Wishing in gladness and in safety, may all beings be at ease. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short, or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. Even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings. Radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will. Whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness, one should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding. By not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. Thank you all for a wonderful class. Peace.